Thank you for tuning into the Shorewood Stacks. I'm Lisa Quintero, Young Adult Librarian.
And I'm Lizzie Jelly, Virtual Engagement Librarian.
This is a show where we talk to you about what we've been reading, listening to, or watching. And today we have a special guest. Our Assistant Director Emily Vieyra is here to talk with us about romance.
Hi.
Excellent. I am so excited to talk about romance with you today. It is a perfect time of year to do so. And I thought before we get started and really dive into the genre, I would love to talk a little bit about how you got into romance and what romance as a genre is to you.
Well, that is an interesting question for me because I am a romance newbie, major romance newbie. But I've always been a rom-com movie fan and TV show fan, and so I think it was a pretty natural fit for me to start reading them. And I definitely came into it with a lot of the same views that some people probably have of like stereotypical romance readers and the kind of like bodice ripper style. And I realized very quickly that that's totally not the case. There's tons and tons of different subgenres of romance, including...
You mean it's not all like Fabio?
No, it's not all Fabio. They don't all have kilts on the cover. That's a thing, and it's super cool if you're into that. I love it. But I realized there's like stuff for readers like me who just like good like realistic fiction with like, you know, relatable characters and kind of comedic happenings. And so that was really fun for me to find that I actually like reading them. And the reason I kind of got prompted to it is because I took on the task of selecting them for the library and realized I better start reading them so that I could have a real better sense of what was going on in the genre. So that's kind of how I got into it.
Absolutely. I love to hear about how you're a little bit more new to the genre as well, especially me as a diehard romance reader.
Lifelong reader.
Really a lifelong lover of romance. I grew up on like the YA romances. Sarah Dessen was my girl. Jenny Han, even like the Stephenie Meyer Twilight series. I was there as they were coming out, waiting in the lines. So this is my bread and butter in terms of genres of books. But like Emily said, there really is, in my opinion, a romance for everybody because there are so many subgenres and so many different types and tropes and things going on. It's really cool. I'm still like discovering new romance genres and tropes that I didn't know of. Apparently werewolf paranormal romance is really having a comeback. Mm-hmm. Who knew?
I did not.
Yeah. I just learned. So
okay, well, I'm going to have to put that on the list.
Absolutely.
Check it out. An old werewolf, new tricks.
Old werewolf. Yeah, that works. Sure. That works. But it's really interesting that you talk about how you took over romance selection here at Shorewood because we did not always have a romance collection here at the library.
We didn't. We had some romance paperbacks in a kind of a collection, but it was something that we didn't really purposely select. We got a lot of them as donations, so thank you to whoever those people were over the years who donated your romance paperbacks to us. But a few years ago, a patron brought to the attention of Rachel and myself that we were really doing our patrons a disservice by not paying attention to this genre that was really going like gangbusters around us, and we were just not paying attention to it at all. And so she really brought our attention to it, and I have to thank her anonymously for that. She probably, if she's listening, knows who she is, but so that was really a prompt to us, and so we started doing it with the previous librarian, and then it transferred to me, and just keep going. And it's certainly become really popular for our patrons.
Absolutely. I think that's a really great point to talk about how romance has... although it's seeing a kind of new renaissance in popularity, it has always been a popular genre.
Absolutely.
But just not given a lot of credit or paid attention to by some of the heavy hitters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not as like mainstream or something.
Absolutely, and that's by publishing houses as well. Right. There's all kinds of ways that romance was overlooked. And I think part of that comes in is this is a genre that has historically been marketed towards women and written by women. Mm-hmm. So the heavy-hitting old white men didn't really see it as having literary merit. And romance is here to stay. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And the readers certainly don't have to just be women. And I think that's really shown by the characters and the storylines that are now in today's romance and the writers of today's romance that, you know, cross all gender lines, all types of sexual expressions and sexuality and relationship types. And there's something literally, you know, for any type of human. Or werewolf, or ghost, probably, or vampire out there.
Yeah, I know there's been like a big, surge in young adult romance, like for queer kids, because there used to be just like boy meets girl, but now there's a lot more like boy meets boy and girl meets girl and ace people and like all sorts of different things. So it's cool to hear that that's like filtered out into adults. I feel like sometimes that stuff starts in YA and then like moves out because people are like, I read this when I was younger. Why doesn't this exist in the adult genre?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really important to give YA romance some credit in that as well, because adult romance is very slowly but surely increasing its inclusion. One of my favorite things to look at in terms of that is actually from a romance bookstore called The Ripped Bodice. They release a report every single year about the racial diversity in romance. They didn't release the 2021 yet, but in their 2021, the numbers actually were pretty disappointing, and it was right around 8% of romances published by major publishing houses were written by authors of color, which is such a small amount.
Crazy low. And that's totally not representative of the people who are reading romance. I can't imagine. Or the people who could potentially be reading romance but don't think that it's for them because they see the covers, they see the characters, and they don't see themselves reflected.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really good point as well, to think about how the readership of romance has been a really kind of stereotype for a long time. Like, this is something that old, white, straight women are reading. And that's simply not true. And we see that now, especially as younger readers are really latching on to romance.
Totally.
In that same report, they talked about how younger readers are reading romance a lot more frequently than some of the diehard romance readers of the older generations. And they are really seeking out more diverse titles, more diverse authors, and more diverse couplings in the romances that they're selecting, which is kind of pushing those publishers to say, hey, we better pay attention to this because this is our new market, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I know there's been a lot of like the paranormal stuff because I ordered the sci-fi and it's like, there's a lot of the werewolf, the Gail Carriger series, the Parasol Protectorate, where she falls in love with a werewolf, and then there's vampires and
there's romance in other genres too.
Yeah.
That's another kind of like avenue for me that I got in, is like I'm a big mystery reader, and there's definitely a lot of mystery series, especially the cozy mysteries, which I love. With No Shame, that have romance elements in them and that have that crossover element.
Absolutely. And I think that's part of why it's kind of hard to nail down romance as a strict genre either, because there's really only two things, according to the Romance Writers of America, that a romance needs to be considered a romance. And those are a central love story and an emotionally satisfying and optimistic ending. So that's pretty broad in a lot of ways. And we can see that absolutely in mysteries. We can see that in general fiction. We see that all over in YA.
For sure. Yeah, totally.
Which is super fun, which is why we get so many different romances, which I think is really important, that we've done a lot of work. Emily's done a lot of work before I came along as well to really diversify our collection. So there is a way for everyone to find themselves within our romance collection, or we're working to make sure everybody can. But I think that's a really important thing to talk about as well, as we are seeing a lot more diverse authors publishing in romance as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So now that we've talked a little bit about that, I think we can maybe talk about some other ways that the romance revival is happening. We would be remiss if we didn't talk about some popular Netflix adaptations of heavy-hitting romance novels and authors like Bridgerton, of course, responsible for a huge boom in historical romance popularity, which before Bridgerton came out actually wasn't a super popular subgenre, which I didn't realize because that's one of my favorites. Right. A little biased. But Bridgerton just zoomed that right up to the top. Sure. We saw a few other ones coming up as well. My girl Jenny Han, YA romance author, and To All the Boys I've Loved Before. So good.
So good. Binge those on Netflix.
Absolutely. And it was so cool to see that coming around again as an adult in a book that I'd read as a teenager, right? Being like, oh my gosh, this is still ringing true with other people. This is so cool to see. We also see Robin Carr, another really popular romance author, and the success of her series Virgin River.
Yep. Absolutely.
There's so many. I feel like I'm missing so many more because it's really had a heyday.
Yeah,
I know Outlander.
Outlander.
For
How
sure.
could we forget?
That's a classic crossover, or not even like. It's really not. I mean, it's totally a romance, but it's so many other things too.
Yeah, like historical fiction.
Yeah,
and
right.
But
it's
definitely
a little bit of paranormal. It's all everything.
Yeah,
every genre pretty much. Kudos to Diana Gabaldon.
So here, if you're hearing the names of these shows as you listen to us and you're like, wait, but I don't read romances, but I like all those shows and movies, like, then you might like reading romance.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, absolutely. That's where I'm coming from. Turns out you might like reading romance.
And I feel like, especially in like the climate that we're in right now, where everything's just so dark and heavy,
yeah.
sometimes you just want something where it's gonna wrap up in a happy way,
Totally.
even if it's like a little silly or like predictable or whatever. You're just like, I just want something happy.
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely. And that's actually been really reflected in the romance publishing industry and the kind of book selling trade overall. The pandemic had a huge influence on the boom of romance over the last couple years as people are feeling just really sad and they want to feel happy for a little while. Yeah. And romance is a great kind of escapist genre to do that in. Totally. And I was reading in a different report than the Ripped Bodices report that romance was actually the most popular fiction genre outside of general fiction, accounting for over 20% of the publishing industry in the past couple years, which is huge, right?
Yeah, that's wild.
Super wild. And shows romance is a lot more popular than we think sometimes.
Yeah, it's true. It's definitely not what you think it is.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's also really cool to see that resurgence of romance after having kind of a bad reputation as a genre for a while. A lot of people are scared to try it. They see it as either too dirty or too sexy for them to read, but there really is all levels of romance, all different things going on. And so it's really nice to see that resurgence as a longtime lover of romance.
And I know, thinking about that, people's perceptions, I'm sure there are people too who think it's too white and it's too kind of like norm conformist for them to, I don't know, just too much. And I think that's reflective of, some controversy, if you know a little bit about it, with the Romance Writers of America, who've really come under fire for giving awards to really just by and large only white authors, some storylines that were really not really reflective of broader societal values, and that can definitely influence readers and turn people off of that genre altogether, which it shouldn't, because I think there's enough writers saying this doesn't represent us, this association or group doesn't stand for everything anymore, and they're pushing back against that.
Absolutely. And that's been really cool to see, especially in the last couple of years with the RWA and some huge pushback from major authors. And this has been going on for several decades as well. Nora Roberts left the organization in the early 2000s after they refused to recognize LGBTQ romance as legitimate.
Whoa,
which is like, she's a heavy
Nora
hitter.
Roberts, way to go.
I was like, go you, Nora. Well done. Love that for you. But even it took until, I think, 2019 before a Black author won one of the Romance Writers of America's awards.
Wow.
Which is horrific when you think about it, considering how long the organization has been around and that it's viewed as like the premier organization for romance writers.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So much too late, still steeped in controversy from what I understand as well. So, but it's good to see people sticking up about it, talking about it, and pushing them to do better as an organization, and the genre as well. It's really good to see limits being pushed within romance, which is super fun.
Yeah, I agree.
So what are some of y'all's favorite titles from the last few years?
I have so many, unfortunately. I think 98% of the books I read are romance. So if you need a suggestion, I'm a librarian.
How do you narrow it down?
It's so hard. But I did narrow it down to a few series that I really enjoyed over the last year. All three of them are historical now that I'm looking at it, so it might not be your taste, but 2 out of 3 are also queer historicals. So if that is something you're interested in, I know, right? Like a sub-genre, if you will. One of them being Olivia Waite's Feminine Pursuit series. She is incredible as an author, and the series is so fun in terms of queer historical romances, because it's so focused on joy for the characters and less about the threat of persecution, which is something that we really have to kind of be wary of when reading a queer historical, and they're so just silly as well. It's just like women doing cool things and living their dreams, being like astronomers and beekeepers, and I forget what the last one, she's a piano composer and a weaver that fall in love. It's so fun. And it's extra fun to me because Olivia Waite is a bisexual author who was told for years that lesbian romance wouldn't sell. So she just didn't write it. She wrote the first one just for fun for herself, ended up publishing it, and it took off. And now it's a really beloved queer historical series.
Cool.
That's amazing.
She's so cool.
I love hearing that.
And we have them here at Shorewood as a heads up.
That's great. I love, like, the idea of historical romance that doesn't just have, like, the Duke, the Rogue, the Prince, because that's just, like, a little bit blah. So, the beekeeper and the weaver is way cooler.
So fun.
It's so much cooler.
But I think that's definitely a valid critique of historical romance. We see that a lot on, like, the Victorian and Regency romances. They're very formulaic and also very white as a result. So this was super fun to see some diversity. Another one that is a really great diverse historical romance is Erica Ridley's The Wild Winchesters series. We get not just queer characters, we get characters of color, we get non-binary characters, and we get love in a whole bunch of different formats as well, which is really cool to see. So another one if you're into a queer historical.
Cool.
The last one that's also historical that I would love to recommend is Evie Dunmore's series. It's called The League of Extraordinary Women, and it's all about suffragette love stories. Okay. It's very fun. It's a lot of, like, girl power romance if you're into that, but it also deals with a little bit of, like, unconventional relationships, talking about, like, finding love later in life. At the time, that was really, like, taboo to be unmarried at a certain age, and women going to school for the first time at Oxford. It's really neat if you're into, like, Victorian with a little less
Yeah, I am. I'm learning things. This is great. I feel like I have fewer kind of, like, recommendations, but I'm really a big fan of Sally Thorne. So I read the Hating Game. I read it in, like, a weekend, all as an ebook, because my daughter fell asleep on me when she was sick, and I just had to, like, I had my phone, and I was like, I need to read. So I just got it on Hoopla and read it. And it was so good. And then I also read her second First Impressions, which came out last year, which was also so good. And I just love the way she writes really funny characters, and they always have just really lovely friendships and family relationships, and that are kind of interesting and, I don't know, exciting beyond just the romance, too. Because I love that. Like, I love a buddy comedy. So, like, if it's kind of got that element to it, that's really fun to me. Plus, I think has, like, a sexy element, and it's not, like, bad. My mom borrowed second First Impressions from me after I read it, because I read it so quickly, and she was with me, and she was like, I want to read that. I was scared to give it to her. But I was like, Mom, it's a romance. Like, it has sex in it. And she's like, that's okay. And she read it, and she's like, yeah, it's just like a Hallmark movie. Like, that's true. Which she loves. She loves Hallmark movies. So, like, it worked out.
HBO Hallmark movie.
Yeah. I was like, she's like, I mean, it has a little sex in it, but other than that, it's like a Hallmark movie. So, yeah. And I was like, that's so true and so great. So that's, like, she's definitely an author that I've really latched onto. So anything that comes across that's, like, similar to Sally Thorne, I'm on board for sure.
I love that. I love reading a romance novel where at the end of it, I feel like all the characters would be my best friends.
Yes.
That happened. I read Corelia Stutz Walter's Satisfaction Guaranteed. It's absolutely bonkers if you love a silly contemporary romance.
I do. I'm going to put it right now.
We have it on our shelf. It's really cute. And they inherit a sex toy store that is going bankrupt, and it's up to them to either save it or sell it, basically. And the store's name is Satisfaction Guaranteed. So it's a little, definitely a little silly, but it's also really heartwarming, and all the characters are just so fun. I just want to, like, sit down and have coffee with all of them. I, like, finished the book, and I was so sad, that, like, empty feeling. I was like, oh, I miss them. Those are my friends.
Yeah, I love that. I really love that.
It's funny, I don't read a lot of adult romance, but I do read a lot of young adult romance. And, like, I just finished Last Night at the Telegraph Club, which won a whole bunch of awards by Helen Miller. And, like, that one was so good, and that one's also, like, a historical one. Recently I read an adult one. It was the Kiss Quotient by Helen Hoying. And that one was neat because it's, like, she's a neurodiverse author, and, like, the main character is, like, neurodiverse.
That's been on my to-read list forever, too.
And then, like, there's been a surge right now of ones based on, what's it called? K-pop.
Oh, yes.
So I read one
Cool.
called XOXO by XEO recently. That was so cute because it's like about she like has to go to Korea because her grandma's sick with her mom, and she ends up falling in love with like a K-pop star, but she doesn't know that he's a K-pop star, and she met him in the U.S. first, and then like like when she's in Korea, she runs into him. And, like,
That's great. I'm reading one set in Korea right now. It's called Heart and Soul by Jen Frederick.
Okay, cool.
And it's got like a similar like element, maybe. I haven't gotten that far yet, but like definitely the man interest is like somebody that, the main lady doesn't know because she's from the US, not from Korea. But yeah, it's really fun. Definitely love any kind of book, but a romance especially set somewhere else, or with characters from a different cultural background. I just think it's such a like great way to learn about people. That's the whole point of reading. That's the whole point of books.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think romance gets a bad rep of not having literary merit, but I learned so much reading romance. I learned so many things about history, about like different cultures, about all kinds of stuff. What was the one? Oh, Casey McQuiston's One Last Stop. I learned so much about the 70s punk scene from that book. It was incredible.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I'm totally like reading Heart and Soul right now. Like, she's kind of learning about how easy or how supposedly easy it is to learn Korean, and which has a name that I'm sorry I'm completely blanking on. And I'm like, oh my God, I could do that. That'd be really cool. I'll just learn right alongside her.
Just pull up your language app on one phone, get a book on your tablet.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, just find it on Mango Languages.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was one of the interesting things about last night at the Telegraph Club is like it takes place in the 50s, and so it was during the Red Scare, like, when the McCarthyism was happening and people were getting blacklisted, and so one of the main characters is Chinese, and she's a lesbian, and then she falls in love with this other girl, and like it talks about how the McCarthyism, didn't just affect like the Asian community in California, it also was affecting the queer community because they were trying to get people to like be informants, and they were like, if you're queer, you're like automatically communist or whatever, and like raiding the clubs and things like that, and so it was interesting. I had no idea. Like I knew that there was like the whole like communist Red Scare, and I knew that like it affected Hollywood, but I don't really think about how it affected people beyond, people getting blacklisted for making movies.
Totally.
That's so cool for like a YA book too. That's a lot of intersections to be tackling. Yeah. I have to read this next. Is it on the shelf? I'm going to go check it out.
Yeah, that sounds incredible. And it's been winning awards, so that's great.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of talk about that one as well. I think it just won another award.
Yeah, she yesterday. Like posted like a picture on Twitter, and it's got like 7 stickers. You can like barely see the cover of the book now.
That's
like,
great.
This is amazing.
Yes, so good.
I love that.
Yeah, I love it. And that's definitely a great example of like a book that will reach adult audiences too. Yeah. And will reach beyond the genre that it's labeled as.
For sure. Are there any books that you're looking forward to that haven't come out yet that you've heard any buzz about?
I have a couple, even though I'm not buying romance or I'm not selecting romance anymore. I say buying, but just like it's not my money. I'm not selecting romance anymore. I've kind of paid attention because I definitely still want to read some, and I have 2 that have come across my radar as looking amazing, and one is called Savvy Sheldon Feels Good as Hell.
Oh, I've heard about that.
And I was like, well, that sounds fantastic. Just the title is enough for me. And then The Roughest Draft is another one that I thought sounds really good, and it's co-written by, I think they're a married couple, and then the book is also about a couple who used to be co-writers together, and then they kind of like fall out, and then they come back together, and maybe fall in love. Maybe they were in love all along.
Ooh, kind of a meta love story. That's cool.
Yeah. What about you, Lizzie? I'm sure you have a long
I have too many, so I tried to narrow it down to 3, which is really hard for me to do. But the one that I'm really, really looking forward to is Alexandria Bellefleur's 3rd book, Count Your Lucky Stars. I absolutely loved her first one called Written in the Stars. Haven't read the second one yet, but really looking forward to it. The first one is really like astrologer romance with like a no-nonsense actuary. And it was so cute. It was the classic like fake dating trope, and then, oh no, we're actually in love. It was really cute. Highly recommend. I'm also heard that Casey McQuiston is releasing a YA book this spring called I Kissed Cheryl Wheeler. So very much looking forward to that. It was only just announced, so I don't know anything, but I love Casey McQuiston, so I will absolutely be reading that. The third one that I'm absolutely just so over the moon for is India Holton's second book, and it's called The League of Gentlewomen Witches. She is incredible for writing these like fantastical, zany, historical romances. It's like, if you love The Princess Bride, you'll love her writing. Or if you like, I don't know, I compared it to like Pride and Prejudice and Zombies or like that kind of series, and it's just so silly and fun and adorable and very like low steam level, if that's your pace, and they're so cute. And she's adorable as a person as well, so I will support her any way I can by reading this hopefully so funny new romance. And I think that's in March, so real soon.
Yeah,
cool.
That's awesome. There's another one I can't think of the name of. I know it's on our shelves to be like put out on the shelf soon. Maybe you remember what it's called, Lizzie, but it's like somebody and somebody throw a wedding or like plan a wedding.
Devontae and Chris throw a wedding.
Yes, that one looks so cute,
It's meant to be super funny as well.
Yeah, that one looks fantastic. Great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we have a whole long list of books that we've read and are looking forward to, which I don't know. If you need any more diverse suggestions, come find any of us. I'm sure we can think of many more as well.
Yeah, and I mean, now it's a great time. You know, this is our February podcast. Valentine's Day is coming up. So if you're looking for some happy things to read, because everything is just kind of blah right now.
A little gray,
come
a little
to the library,
and pandemic-y.
Absolutely.
And we've also been working on genrefying our DVDs. So there's now all the romance have been pulled out. So if you like rom-coms, you can come check out the DVDs.
Incredible. I love that. I will be there right away after
Yes, it's the best. I wonder, you know, as we're talking about this, if we should throw together a little book list with all the titles we've mentioned, put it on the website.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. Great.
Check the website after this, listeners. It will be there. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for chatting romance with us, Emily. It was incredible.
Thank you for having me. I'll definitely come back again and talk about anything else that I can think of.
Awesome. And now for some library news. We have quite a few events coming up in February. We have our Rhyme and Read Lapsit and our story time. The sessions for the beginning of the month were canceled, but on February 15th, the Rhyme and Read Lapsit will start, and on February 17th, the story time will start. You can register online for those or in person at the library or via telephone. On Wednesdays, we'll have Art Cart to Go again throughout the whole month of February, and on Wednesday, February 2nd, we'll have the PM Book Club, and the book for that is The Hotel on the Corner of Bitter and Sweet by Jamie Ford, which you can currently get here at the library. On Friday, we have our Grown Up Take and Make Hit. On February 8th, which is a Tuesday, we'll have a family fun night to go. And then on the 9th, which is a Wednesday, we'll have the Job Center of Wisconsin here to offer drop-in help if you are looking for a job. The following week, on Tuesday the 15th, we have a Teen Advisory Board meeting. And on Thursday the 17th, we have our Teen Take and Make. And that day we also have our AM Book Club. And the book for that is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. And then we have Virtual Jazz and Friends Community Reading Day on Thursday, February 24th. As always, if you have any questions or comments for your host, you can email us at shorewoodstacks@gmail.com. You can find us on Podbean, Spotify, or iTunes. Until next time, thanks for listening and be well. The Shorewood Stacks is written and recorded by Lisa Quintero and Lizzie Jelly for the Shorewood Public Library. Music for the show is by Kevin MacLeod. The song is called Ice Flow and can be found on incompetech.com.